Welcome back, everyone. Ryan here with Hands Down DFS. And after a great week 2, we're going to jump right into the week 3 action, taking a first look at the DraftKings Main Slate pricing. Jotted down some initial thoughts going through it this morning, so just want to share with you guys what I'm thinking going into week 3. Starting off at the top with quarterbacks, first thing to note, Kyler Murray passing Patrick Mahomes as the number one priced quarterback on the slate. I don't know, is this the first time that Patrick Mahomes has been overtaken as the number one QB since last year? Hard to imagine it, hasn't been, considering how well Mahomes played last year. But obviously, Kyler Murray starting off the season hot, 2 great games, 34.56 and 38 points, going against a weak defense in Jacksonville. He can definitely continue that streak, but I do fear that they get up big and we get some James Conner, Chase Edmonds action on the ground and kind of take away from Kyler Murray's upside, whereas Mahomes is going up against a better defense. I don't think the Chargers are going to be second ranked against the quarterback like it shows they are so far this season, but I think they are a much improved defense, and this game will stay competitive, and Patrick Mahomes will be throwing the ball a lot. Pick and choose there between Murray and Mahomes, who you think is better. I going to lean Mahomes. I think Kyler Murray's a fine play. Someone who I really like, for more than $1,000 cheaper, $7,000 for Josh Allen is way too cheap in my opinion. He's down $400 where he started the season here at $7,400, and obviously it's a very talented defense Washington has. That's how they were competitive last year, and it's really due to that front seven though. I think what this means for Josh Allen is he's going to be forced outside of the pocket a lot, and he'll be able to do what he does best, which is throw on the run the ball. Last year Washington faced Kyler Murray, and they allowed 286 yards and 1 touchdown through the air, 67 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Also faced off against Lamar Jackson, 192 and 2 touchdowns passing, with 53 yards and 1 touchdown rushing. So you can see Washington, great defense, yes, but they are susceptible to quarterbacks who can run. So I like Josh Allen in this price. At 6,400, Matthew Stafford was someone I really liked last week against Indianapolis. And, it didn't really pan out, only 18 points. But I think a similar game script will happen this week, and even to a higher extent. I commented last week how Indy's defense was renowned for their defensive line, their linebackers being able to really stuff the run. Tampa Bay is the same exact way. They've got some big guys in Ndamukong Suh, Vita Vea, up on that front defensive line. So they'll really be able to stuff the run. And I think this means Matthew Stafford's going to be throwing the ball a lot. Matt Ryan threw the ball 46 times last week against Tampa. Dak in week 1, 58 times. Really, Matt Ryan should have been throwing the ball a lot more. I mean, it was only a 1-score game with like 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. 2 unfortunate pick sixes, but I mean, Matt Ryan could have easily had 50 plus throws and, could have had much more points than he did have. But I think this is a game where Matt Stafford and the Rams have to attack Tampa Bay through the air, so he'll be throwing the ball a lot. Guy I've got a question on, Daniel Jones. Is he good? Is he real this year? I mean, he's definitely fantasy viable, that's for sure. 22.38 points in week 1, almost 30 last week, against probably 2 of the better defenses in Denver and Washington that they'll face. I mean, this goes right back to what I was talking about with Josh Allen against Washington. Allowed Daniel Jones to rush for 95 yards. Even more reason to like Josh Allen. But here against Atlanta, maybe Daniel Jones can show off his arm. Atlanta has played some ugly defense, given up big points their past 2 weeks. And, I think this can definitely continue with Daniel Jones at 5,800. It's a really interesting spot. He's got, 61-ish, 60 yards per game on the ground. Like I said, definitely fantasy viable. He can get you those points. So I think that's a really good spot to attack here for if you're going value at quarterback. And then same price, guy that the hands down DFS lineup stacked last week, Teddy Bridgewater, 5,800, up $400 from last week. I'm just scared of any team that goes against the Jets, just for the fact that it seems like anybody who plays the Jets, it's just an ugly, low scoring, run the ball, like pound and ground type game. Ground and pound. Yeah. So don't know if I love Teddy Bridgewater. I kind of hope his price comes back down because I do like him. I will like him a lot this season. Just games against the Jets just scare me. But, if you think if you think Denver can keep throwing the ball and doesn't have to resort to Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon on the ground, that's another spot that you can go to. Over to running backs, Dalvin Cook at 8,400. This is such an interesting price. He came down $700 from last week, and he's going against Seattle, who I don't know if anyone saw, but Derrick Henry had a decent game against Seattle. I mean, let's look at his stats exactly. 3 touchdowns, 182 yards on the ground, 55 in the air, so 225, 230 yard all-purpose game for Derrick Henry. Dalvin Cook, same exact type of player where he can contribute through the air and on the ground. He's had 10 targets this season, about 200 yards on the ground. Don't know why he's so cheap here. Especially against Seattle, that baffles me. I think he's a very, very good cash play. I think he'll be chalky. So maybe hedge your ownership to him in GPPs a bit, but I feel like that's way too cheap, and I'm going to be playing him a lot in cash. Alvin Kamara at 8,200. I wrote him down because he came down $600, and 8,200. If you saw this last year, this would be a smash play, but Kamara just hasn't gotten the same work with Winston at quarterback as he did last year with Drew Brees or Taysom Hill or whoever was playing quarterback for New Orleans is last year. Saints looked very bad against Carolina last week, and now they're traveling over to Foxborough, have to play a tough New England defense. Not a spot I love, even at this reduced price. I hope Jameson, he had 6 targets, improved on his 4 from week 1, but I hope that connection really gets going. One, because I have Alvin Kamara on my season-long fantasy team, and it would really be great if he could step it up, but also, he should be a guy who should be getting Christian McCaffrey-type ceiling numbers, and he's just not right now. A couple spots down, Austin Eckler at 7,200. I was worried about him after week 1. He didn't have any targets, and I was like, maybe new head coach, Brandon Staley, maybe he's being schemed out of that kind of role he's played in the past, which is a pass-catching running back. But then he came back last week, bounced back, 9 receptions, 9 targets, out of 54 yards on the ground. Really good game, 22.5 points. That's without even finding the end zone. And with going against Kansas City, who of course is going to be putting up a lot of points, one would assume it's going to be a game where the Chargers will be throwing the ball a lot. I think Austin Eckler will be used a lot. We're also going to talk about the Chargers wide receivers, but I just think the Chargers are definitely a place we can hope that they pick it up. That passing game really hasn't been as efficient through the first 2 weeks as we've hoped. But I think, if you're going to want to stay competitive with the Chiefs, it's going to need to be. Down to 5,900 with Darnell Henderson. Price is up a couple $100 from last week, from 56 to 57, now 59 against Tampa Bay, who I just mentioned. Huge front 7, huge front 4. It's just you really don't want to play running backs against Tampa Bay, and now he's questionable. Maybe we're going to get some Sony Michel. Both of those guys, don't even touch them, just fade them. Don't play running backs against Tampa. We learned that with Zeke week 1. Week 2, I guess, definitely Mike Davis did not work. I guess it's Cordell Patterson, maybe, I guess, is technically a running back now. Running back / wide receiver. He had a decent game, but just don't love anybody on the Rams against Tampa Bay. And the last guy for running backs I want to mention on first look, just scrolling through, taking a initial look at prices, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, $4,800. He was $6,700 last week. Obviously he wasn't on the main slate, so a little bit skewed, but still $6,600 in week 1. He came down dramatically, and he just has not lived up to the expectations when he came into the league last year that we thought he was. But when you're getting 13, 14 carries a game, and you're the number 1 running back on the team for $4,800, it's going to be great value, assuming he does anything with it. Obviously, 3.6 isn't great, but even if he's just getting 10 to 12 points at 4,800. If you're putting him in cash games, I love that. I think he's a great cash play, especially, like I said, Chargers passing game really hasn't been able to get going this season. So if the Chiefs can get up and Chargers aren't able to keep it close, Clyde Edwards-Helaire could have 18 rushes, and I don't think that's out of the picture. So I love him in cash. Jumping over to wide receivers. First guy I have written down is Terry McLaurin, 6,900. you've got to love 14 targets under Taylor Heineke, but against Buffalo, who's just made themselves well known in the league as having a dangerous secondary, I think there's going to be ownership on this game and on McLaurin, especially after that big 14 target 30-point game. But after a $700 price increase, it's a guy I'm probably going to fade. I'll look into him a little bit more and give you guys a rundown in the full slate breakdown. But just upon first look, that $6,900 price against one of the tougher defenses in the league, that's a fade spot in my opinion. Someone who I think is too cheap is Keenan Allen, who has come down from 7,000 down to 6,600. And, I keep talking about this game. If you haven't already gotten the picture, it's probably a game I'm going to be stacking a lot of, have a lot of pieces of. But, you're in a favorable game script against Kansas City. Kansas City's going to be scoring. I have no doubt about that. Don't think the Chargers defense, despite how well they've played so far, is going to be able to hold Patrick Mahomes. I think Herbert will be throwing the ball 55 times. Those are going to Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Eckler, as we talked about earlier. So with his price decreased down to 6,600, because we've seen Mike Williams, who climbed up here to 6,400, because we've seen him be the sole recipient of targets, I think their ownership is going to fall more this way, and people are not going to look at Keenan Allen as much. So I think that's another good spot that you can get some leverage on. Then I want to talk about the Tennessee guys right here, both at 6,500. Both of them are just, the only thing I need to say about them, they're just too cheap for their ceiling. These are guys who, obviously they were on different teams last year, but A.J. Brown was a $7,500 player. Julio Jones was probably low 7,000s when he was healthy and playing well for the Falcons last year. Both these guys just way too cheap for the ceiling they have. And then they're going against Indy, who we kind of talked about last week, and it didn't work out, so I'm a little hesitant, very slightly hesitant, especially with Derrick Henry as the running back. But Indy has a good run defense. Is Tannehill going to have to throw the ball more than he has this season? Let's see. He's thrown it 35 and 40 times. Do we see him throw it closer to that 40 to 45 range against Indy? I don't know. If that is the case, if someone told me Ryan Tannehill's throwing the ball 45 times, I don't think putting both of them in your lineup is unreasonable, because I think they're too cheap. Over to the Cardinals wide receivers, another interesting wide receiver core. Hopkins had a tough matchup against Minnesota, going against Patrick Peterson. Prices come up a little bit, and he only had 10% ownership. If you think he's going to, that price increase is going to bring that ownership down, I think this is a spot that you can definitely go to. We talked about Kyler Murray with Jacksonville. Are they going to get up big and just run the ball? If they do get up big, I think it's because DeAndre Hopkins is, scoring touchdowns. Then we've got Christian Kirk, 5,400. Way too expensive. Just fade him. I think he's the running back wide receiver 3 at best on this team. Potentially wide receiver 4. I think AJ Green might have that wide receiver 3 spot. This price is ridiculous. Just nothing else to say. Just fade him. Rondale Moore at 5,000. Great play last week if you played him. His price came up $1,000, but again, I still love him. Keep talking about this, but I'm a little bit scared against the Jags if they get up big. But I think this is a price, if he could stay in this low $5,000, high $4,000 range. This is a spot I'm going to be going to a lot this year. I think he's a great player, such a talented player, and he's brings you great value if you put him in. And then lastly, AJ Green got another big price increase to 4,500. Loved him a lot last week. He did find the end zone, got 13 points, not too bad. I think he's definitely going to have an impact on the Cardinals long term, probably this week as well. But he's played the second most snaps on the Cardinals 2 weeks in a row out of wide receivers. But he's a little bit too expensive this week, I think. I want to see his price come down a little bit, and like I said, he might be the wide receiver 3, so I don't know, that might be an unreasonable request. Maybe it goes up, or stays at this price. I think this is a fine price just this week. I'm probably not going to play him, but I do like AJ Green kind of long term as a DFS staple this season. Last guy I want to touch on for wide receivers upon first look, actually 2 more guys. One guy, KJ Osborne, 3,500. I don't know if DraftKings just missed this, but this dude just had 2 great weeks at being basically minimum price, and he's still only 3,500 going up against Seattle, who I feel like anytime we see Seattle on the slate, it's going to be a game that I'm going to expect is high scoring. I think it's going to be Dalvin Cook this week. Don't get me wrong. I think Dalvin Cook's going to be doing a lot of scoring against Seattle. But KJ Osborne, if you're getting 6 to 9 targets a game and you're 3,500, that's just an automatic play. I mean, cash game, I think he's going to be chalky, so I'm only going to consider him in cash. But I think that's just way too cheap. And then lastly, up at 5,500 for the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. He saw the biggest price increase on the slate at $1,200 from 43 to 5,500. He's the clear wide receiver 1 on the Colts. Even with Paris Campbell back, I'm not worried about him at all. I'm not worried about that hurting his usage. I mean, Campbell's a wide receiver 3 with T.Y. Hill now. He's the wide receiver 3, so I don't think that hurts Pittman at all. At 5,500, I still like this price for him. I think he's very playable this week. And we'll close out with tight ends. We don't need to touch on defense. We'll just close out with tight ends. First thing I noted, Gronk, 5,500. I mean, he's come out and had 2 straight 2-touchdown games. If you trust Gronk on a team that has 4 highly capable pass catchers and, a QB and Tom Brady who loves to spread the ball, go for it. You can definitely play him. He's too expensive for me. I would have loved to play him at 3,900. That would have been great. 4,700 would have been great. At 5,500, when it could be Mike Evans or Godwin or Antonio Brown catching 2 touchdowns instead of Gronk, a little bit too scary for me, so I'm not going to go there this week. Just noted him because he had a big price increase, 3rd most expensive tight end. Logan Thomas, talked a lot about this Washington-Buffalo game. Going to mention this guy as the 8th highest priced tight end, when I think he's probably a top 5 tight end in the league. Didn't like Terry McLaurin because the Bill secondary is just too good, and I thought he was too expensive. But what does that mean? That, if you're not going to be passing to your wide receivers because of a good secondary, you're going to need to target someone. Logan Thomas against Washington's linebackers, I think that's a good matchup. I think Thomas, probably either leads or is second on the team in targets this week against Buffalo. And, when you have obviously he's not a rookie, but I'll just call him like an amateur and Taylor Heineke, playing, one of his first few games. I know he started a little bit last season because of injuries, but just, still relatively new to the league. He's going to want to rely on a guy like Logan Thomas. Similar to that, down at 3,200, Cole Kmet, I thought is going to be good value. Whoever starts for Chicago, I don't know whether it's going to be Dalton or Foles or Fields. No one really looked good last week. Obviously, Dalton had that injury, but his price came down a bit. Only got 1 target for 1 catch for 0 yards. But the Browns have given up the 4th most DK points per game last season at tight ends. And I think whoever does end up starting for the Bears is going to want a guy that's, a big reliable guy like Cole Kmet to pass the ball to. 7 targets week 1. I think that's what we should see against Cleveland in week 3. So I really like that value. And then last but not least, before we finish this up, back up to the top, TJ Hawkinson. Dude's just a monster. I think he's the 3rd best tight end in this league behind the top 2 guys on the slate, and Kelsey and Waller. But week in and week out, he's just going to be Detroit's most targeted player. I don't know if it's Baltimore's not good defensively this year or they've just played 2 good offenses, but obviously Kansas City is a good offense. I don't think there's any debate there, but Derek Carr and the Raiders have come out and started the season 2-0. Maybe they're a good offense, so that's why they put up points on the Ravens, but maybe the Ravens defense isn't as good as we think it is. Regardless, I think Detroit, if they want to keep this game close, it's going to be Hawkinson. We saw it Green Bay Monday Night Football. Hawkinson was getting the primary receiver of the looks. So I don't think you can ever go wrong with Hawkinson even at this price. Plus his price came down $300. So I think that'll be a great play this week. I'll be having a lot of him. That'll about do it for us for this first look. Stay tuned, and we'll be breaking down, going deep breakdown into this week 3 slate with Scotty later in the week. This was just kind of an initial reaction to our pricing. So please subscribe, like this video, and just stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter at HandsDownDFS, and just stay tuned for all the content we have out for week 3 and, all the content we just have for the rest of the season. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.